sit down.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Build, Paint, Play. I'm Dave.
And I'm Jake. Greetings, programs.
Greetings. Hi, everybody. Tonight, our main topic is going to be... Let me just sort through my pile of books here. Talking miniatures. So we're going to talk about a bunch of fun stories from Games Workshop's past. Jake and I might have a couple of those of our own to add into things. Sorry, just saying hi, Axe and Axe, catch you in the rerun. Hey, Scott. Ryan C says, am I here? Yes. Am I sober? I plead the fifth. John Steining's here.
Nobody needs to know that.
Hey, John. Chris says, evening to both you gentlemen. And Josh says, hey, kids, do you know what time it is? No, what time is it?
It's Build, Paint, Play time.
Yay! Time to get a watch. I got a watch.
I mean, maybe. Who has a watch?
Have I told you about my watch?
No.
So I got a smartwatch thingy to help me with tracking my walking. For those of you who don't know, I've been doing a bunch of walking for the last 18 months or so in an effort to be moving and not decay as I get older.
Right.
But I've been tracking everything on my phone. It's been saying how many miles, how many steps, all that sort of stuff. And whenever I go walking with my wife, my phone would also always track like about 10% less than her. So if we walked 4 miles according to her phone, it'd be 3.6 miles according to mine. And I was like, that's kind of weird. And somebody was like, well, you just need to get a smartwatch because they're much more accurate. So I got the smartwatch. And then I thinking, okay, cool, it's going to be showing me like 10% higher, right? No, it was like 10% less again. So I was like, this isn't working. This isn't telling me. How can I trust any of these things? So I have a watch.
That seems a little odd.
Right. Right, it says smartwatches are the only smart thing in my seat. Possibly at the moment,
right,
Ryan, that might be the case. And Jim is getting ready to work on some Plague Marines. So, cool. Welcome, everybody. The first thing I'm going to do is just remind folks about our wonderful sponsor, our season sponsor, the Army Painter. So... they'll be with us for the rest of this season. I think we'll also be we'll do another holiday special at the end of the year. We might try and get Adam and Kat on.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And maybe sit there and do some painting, mess around with some stuff, maybe do a giveaway. I think that'd be pretty sweet. But we're very excited to have the Army Painter on board as the first of our sponsors. Very cool. Ryan says, supposedly they're based off the average walking span. If your legs are longer, you get screwed over. My legs are actually about the same size. I have a long torso, short legs, so...
I have very long legs.
Yeah. And a long torso, and a long head. You've got a long everything.
So what do we got? What are we doing here?
But the next thing... Look at you, being super keen. Yes, first up though, let's talk about hobby. Did you get the opportunity to do any hobby this past week?
Well, sort of. I did a paint lesson for a group of kids on Sunday, so I guess technically that counts.
Okay, so you picked up a brush, you stuck it in some paint.
Did a little bit of, walked some young kids through how to paint minis and stuff, and
cool.
How'd
that go?
I think that's the only. I mean, I got to do some reading in the hobby world.
Okay, nice.
I finished another BattleTech novel.
Okay, cool. How many BattleTech novels are there?
There's a ton. There's got to be.
Like
There's got to
hundreds?
be 60.
Okay, more than the
Uh,
more than Horus Heresy.
Uh, yeah, more than a Horus Heresy. Definitely not more than Black Library. Like Black Library has
Oh no,
way
no,
more.
sure, sure. But
But I think there's between like 60 and 100 titles.
right, nice. That's cool. Well, I got a bunch of hobby done. I mean, crazy, working very hard, doing lots of stuff. I almost got my steel helms finished. Well, not finished, but the first 10 plus the Marshal.
Nice. He looks good.
And I decided to give him a bit of a sort of decoration on his cloak there,
Very nice.
which kind of matches.
That's all by hand, I assume.
Yeah, that's all by hand. And the steel helms themselves have the. So I've used the decals on the shields, but the decals on the sheet, even though like in the book they're pictured in everything they're pictured with like a green kind of look to them, and on the sheet they're more of like a yellowish olive, desaturated yellowish olive or grayish olive, which is kind of weird.
The symbols?
Yeah. So let me see if I can pull this out and show you. So there they are. So you've got the gold of the who are those? Settler's Gain, and then right next to it, that does not look green at all, right?
Not really.
No, that's because it's not green, which is a bit of a shame. So I had to put them on, varnish them, paint over them. So to get that sort of a bit more of a jadish, greenish tinge.
Nice.
So a little bit of extra work, but gave me that concentration of painting those fine lines. So when it came to painting the back of the guy's cloak, it was like a little bit easier.
Very nice.
Yep. So I've got those done. I have painted a whole bunch of Marines now. I wasn't sure. Where was I up to last week? Was it the first 5?
You had a test model and you had started working on the first 5.
Okay. So I've got 20 now. I got so obviously it's a very quick scheme, great production lining scheme. So I've got all the. I have 10. I guess I have 11 intercessors now, if you include the test model, and 10 of the assault intercessors.
They're my favorite. The assault intercessors are awesome.
Yep, they are nice. I think roughly I've got another. I probably got another 10 or 20 intercessors to put together, and then another 10 assault intercessors to add to the huge pile. But before then, I'm going to paint up the an eliminator squad.
The eliminators are so good. Their rules
I
are
love those guys.
so good.
The rules are good. Oh, that's
Their
sweet.
rules are awesome.
That's cool. I didn't know that. I just like the look of them.
So like they're Space Marines that have camo cloaks, which
Yep.
you're like, oh, cool. So one of the rules they have is like if you shoot at them
Yep.
at the end of the shooting phase, they can just make a free movement.
Right.
So if somebody jumps across the board and is like, I'm gonna have my orcs run across the board and shoot those guys and then charge them. As soon as they shoot them, they just back up.
Okay.
So you can like back yourself out of charge range, or you could back yourself into cover.
Yep.
I mean, they should be in cover anyways, but like,
Sure.
if you back them up, like you basically can't charge them. And then the other rule they have is if they don't move,
Yep.
they have
Is it
if
precision?
they don't move, they get I think +1 to hit.
Do they get precision, or they start with precision?
Well, I think
anyway?
I think they already have precision,
Okay.
which is nuts. You're like, so instead of shooting your Space Marines, I'm going to shoot your captain who's in that squad.
Yep.
Like they're good. The eliminators are really good.
No, that's good. Cool. I'm glad. I also have a Judicia ready to go. There he is.
His rules are pretty nuts. He gives any unit that he's with fights first,
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna
which is just awesome.
initially I'll throw him in with the assault intercessors, Yeah. I think it should be good. So I've got those. Got the Brutalis Dreadnought that I'm ready to start painting. This is one where I 3D printed the Brutalis parts. And I was telling Jake before the show, I have another Redemptor that I could print some more parts and turn him into a Brutalis. So I was asking some friends, was there any reason why I shouldn't do that? And just before I was about to press print on the printer, Games Workshop said, "Hey, plastic Brutalis, here you go." So I'm going to keep the Redemptor to the side for the moment and get the new Brutalis plastic model and go with that. So there'll be two slightly different looking kits, which is cool. Good for me. But yeah, super excited. Loads of fun stuff going on. All good. And I did plenty of reading in the Talking Miniatures books. But I also my camera flash. Did I show this last week?
I don't think so. That's the Barnes & Noble exclusive, right?
That is, yes. There's Barnes & Noble exclusive that has 13 Citadel miniatures in it. All the characters from the from Blackstone Fortress.
Right.
So all the characters from that, plus the Amble from the dreaded Amble expansion.
I do love the Amble.
Plus Sergeant Venaro.
Okay.
Is dude on the back there. Sergeant on the back there. So, yeah, 30 models, $35.
It's
if you have a Barnes & Noble near you, try and track that down. It's a good deal. But yes, fun. What's everybody else been doing? Scott says, Dave, come on, we know your walks like every other Aussie. Let me know his greatest hits twice in one direction, and it's kicked twice on the way back. Almost, Scott.
In Excess is one of my favorite bands. I love them.
Yeah. So on the way out, it is Listen Like Thieves and Kick.
Nice.
And then on the way back, it is...
it's Elegantly Wasted and Suicide Blonde?
No, I switched to the Church. Okay. So Starfish and Gold Afternoon Fix.
Okay.
For the walk back. So a little bit of esoteric Australian music deep dive there. Not even actually. If you're Australian,
you could always do like Midnight Oil.
I'm not for walking.
AC/DC?
Oh, also not for walking, but more for like day drinking, I'd say.
They definitely. I used to listen to AC/DC when I was going to like play hockey and stuff. When I'm doing my like walks, like they get you moving. So
yeah, for sure. Ryan says army painter. I don't even qualify as a unit painter right now. 5 models total painted for the year. Oh my goodness, come on, dude! I have some Maggotkin that need to kill some Sigmarites. Bring that one of these weekends. Needs to break out the Death Guard too. So yes, Ryan is one of the people I play occasionally. 3 weeks time, I think. Ryan, I'll be at Mecca playing. Scott says need to paint some fine lines. I heard nothing paints fine lines faster. Fine lines finer than Army Painter Black used in conjunction with Army Painter Fine Detail Brush. I heard that on the streets. That sounds pretty close.
Streets don't lie.
That's true. I have, of course, still been using my Game Envy brushes. Josh says sniper displacement tactics. Talking about the, what do you call it? Eliminators. Definitely good. It's nice to be able to move in your opponent's turn, so you don't have to move in yours. It's definitely good. Chris has been trying to get a couple of Heresy models painted for an event in Kansas City next month. Ooh. What's the name of that event, Chris? Have to let us know. Josh says, whoa, cats and dogs living together, mass chaos. A GW game, it's $35. Yes, the apocalypse is upon us. Don't look for it online. You won't be able to find it online. Together.
It's cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria.
Mass hysteria. Yes.
That's what it's supposed to be.
You won't be able to find it online because it is sold out on the Barnes & Noble website. But, yes, Scott says ACDC will up that speed. Currently working on some more Malifaux and display piece. I'm entering at LVO. It's Sluggy from Zabat. We'll need to get some photos because when you say the words Sluggy and Zabat, I have no idea what you're talking about. So, please post some work in progress shots in the group. Chris says it's part of the Taking of Pyrrhix series. Same team that did the narrative events at Adepticon. Oh, cool. Excellent. That'd be very cool. Again, post some photos of that, Chris. Yes, some folks will notice, will have noticed during the week as well that on the Facebook page, the Build Paint Play private group, I switched the name of that from Build Paint Play to Build Paint Play Community, so that we know we can define that as the group. And we also set up a business page, a separate page for Build Paint Play, which is one where once I give him admin access, Jake and I will be able to post there. We're able to post about the show there, and then we can share that to the group and also around other places, because sharing from the group is not able to be done because it's a private group, all that sort of fun stuff. So we will get that sorted and start populating it with some fun things, hopefully. But yeah, should be definitely cool. Awesome. So are we? Let me check.
Yeah, let's jump on the book.
Jump on the book. What's the next? Let me check the next slide. Okay, cool. So talking about the books, as I said, I've got the Talking Miniatures books there. I think earlier this year or late last year, I showed off this book. Is that right?
Yes.
I was probably not reversed, and my camera was probably not reversed at the time. So this book is Dice Men. You can clearly read it from right to left, left to right, whatever. And this is Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone writing about the beginnings of Games Workshop. And this sort of takes...
And this is, for those of you at home, that's British Steve Jackson, not American Steve Jackson from Steve Jackson Games.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, it's also Games Workshop, not Games Design Workshop.
Correct.
So, but this sort of takes things through up until the essentially Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone's sale of Games Workshop to Brian Ansell in roughly 1985, 1986, somewhere around there. So that's where that book came from. But around the same time as Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone were starting to write that book, Robin Dews and John Stallard were working on Talking Miniatures, the books that are displayed right below us there. So I think 2015 they started talking about it, roughly about then. And Robin Dews, for folks who don't know, Robin Dews was the White Dwarf editor from, when was it? I think 91 to 95, roughly. Somewhere in there. And then after that... Yeah. Then after that, he became the head of the design studio for a bunch of time before he eventually left Games Workshop in early 2000s. But Robin was an awesome guy. Big fan. When I was working for Games Workshop in '97, I got to travel from Australia to Nottingham and to meet a bunch of the people that I was going to be working with in the studio. So that's when I was doing studio stuff in Australia. So working on White Dwarf, all that sort of thing. And Robin organised a conference. So we got to a whole bunch of people from around the world who were working in their own little promotion studios around the globe. Got to meet up and talk with each other and see what ideas we had and share best practices, all that sort of fun stuff. And of course, drink a lot of beer. Hell of a lot of beer. So, Then yes, it says 85, 86. I remember that year. Some people watching weren't born. I was running Black Ops in the jungles of Cambodia. 97. That was when I joined the U.S. Air Force. Wow, old. I'd suggest that perhaps all of us could be a little bit old there.
I mean, again, it's not like Dave was working for GW in 85, 86. Like,
oh no, I didn't even know about
sale
GW.
happened.
I didn't even know about then.
Right.
But 97, I was working for them. I've been working for them for almost 4 years. And Mark Maxey is here. Hey, Mark. Says beer. So, what Robin and John did was, rather than sort of sit around and write up their own sort of recollections of events at that time. Sorry, I also forgot to mention John Stallard worked for Games Workshop for a very long time. Almost all of it in sales. He was in trade sales. He was mail order.
When I got hired, he was the head of North America.
Head of the North American business. Yep.
John Matthews reported to him, and then within, I want to say, a year or two of me getting hired, he got promoted, and that's when he opened up the Scandinavian market, I think. And then he opened up the Asian market. He opened up like the Japanese market, and then they didn't know what to do with him, and that's when he left and started Warlord.
Well, yeah, John didn't go to those places and open up the businesses, but he was global sales director.
Right. Yeah.
So he sent people to do those things.
Yeah, I don't mean he was like wearing a red shirt running a store in Tokyo. I mean
But yeah, so John, as you said, John and Paul Sawyer started up Warlord Games in 2008, I think.
I think that's right.
2008, 2007, 2008, and have been running that ever since. And what they did was they went and spoke to 17, I think, different people. It's always tough to tell whether they count Alan Michael Perry as one person or two. But yeah, over the last probably 3 or 4 years, they've gone around and been doing interviews. They've recorded them, and essentially these books are the transcripts of those interviews, where they talk about all sorts of. They reminisce about the fun stories that they all know, and they also dig a little bit deeper and find out about stories that they weren't aware of. Jeff Smith has joined us. Jeff, you'll probably also recognize a lot of the people in these books. So these arrived to me week before last, so I haven't had a
Who's publishing those?
These are published by basically by Robin and John. They started a company called Shaggy Dog Publishing. So specifically to do books like this, really. So when I spoke to Robin about it a few years ago, he was like, "Actually, Dave, yeah, we had the idea beforehand, but we've been talking about it, but we finally just sort of, with your first book, sort of lit a fire under John's butt to get into sort of jump into action on it." So that was cool to know that I had a little bit of a nudge in the right direction.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, as I said, like Robin worked on White Dwarf and all sorts of other publication bits for GW back in the day. But the books sort of cover. They're talking to people who no longer work for Games Workshop, so they're all allowed to chat and reminisce. But it really covers the time when Games Workshop went from that small business importing Dungeons and Dragons through to just before it became the sort of mega multinational company that we know and fear today.
Scott says, Paul Sawyer dogged me pretty hard at the Calgary GT in '02. I was talking to him about a rules question that we had pop up, and midstream he said, "That's a little rubbish," and turned his back to me. He clowned me.
I was going to suggest that perhaps Scott shouldn't use the term dogged. Dogged him hard. This should not be good. Cool. Okay, Calgary GT 02. I didn't know that Paul had come over for that. That's super cool. Excellent. So anyway, I had a bit of a read through this. I took some photos from the second book, but I forgot to take photos from the first book, so I don't have any to show. So I'm just going to... But you can see I made some notes. So I'm just going to go through and have a look at different things. So they talked to the Perrys, Alan and Michael Perry.
Yep.
And
known for their great historical miniatures and horses in particular.
Yep. They're fantastic work. So the Perrys did almost... Well, they probably did about 90% of the initial Lord of the Rings lines.
Yep.
Which was absolutely super cool. They still pump out loads of miniatures to this day. It's been 26 years since Michael lost his right hand in a historical reenactment accident. I don't know if you know about that, Jake.
So I knew that he lost his hand. I didn't remember how he lost his hand. I didn't know it was in a historical reenactment.
Yeah, so Alan and Michael have done a bunch of historical reenacting over the years, but they were doing something that it was like a medieval reenacting, like late medieval period, and one of the they were manning a cannon, so it was firing blanks, but unfortunately, one of the blanks went off at the wrong time and blew Michael's hand off. I'm sure it actually just like pulped it severely to the point where it was not going to be recoverable. So he
that is
had his
crazy.
hand amputated, and so he had to learn how to sculpt with his left hand. He was right-handed and lost his right hand. Had to learn how to sculpt with his left hand, and in an act of solidarity, his brother Alan learned to paint left-handed. So Alan now does that, which is super cool. Ryan says, I remember reading about that in White Dwarf. Yeah, yep. One of the Bretonnian range, a bunch of the Bretonnian range, they just sculpted, like some of those minis were the first ones that Michael sculpted after the accident. So
that range is awesome. When they did the new plastic knights. The new plastic knights, the Knights of the Realm, are some of the best models ever. The Green Knight, to this day, the Green Knight is one of my favorite models of all time.
I'm pretty sure the Green Knight is Michael's as well. So it's pretty crazy. But anyway,
I lost mine. I lost mine in the move. I don't know where he is, but that's one of my few old models that I'm like, man, I wish I still had that.
Yeah, nice. But I'm just going to read a section. This is going to be a little bit of reading from the book, but this is a fun story that I didn't know about. But at Chaos Dwarves, the first time, or second time really, that they did Chaos Dwarves, the first time they did them as a major faction in Warhammer, they all had that Babylonian style, but with the really tall hats. So, it's Robin Juice. So finally jumping forward, I've got to ask you about the question about the Chaos Dwarfs and those hats. Alan. Oh, well, I'm going to blame Rick for that. He said, can you make them look like Babylonians? John Stallard was like, Babylonians, right. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to say those miniatures are still loved today. They are adored and loved. Alan, well, it was great fun making them, because he said, could you make them like Babylonians, curly beards and everything, but with really tall hats? So I made a few with big hats, tall hats, and he said, oh no, I think the hats need to be a lot bigger than that. And I thought, really? Well, okay. And so, as you know, the hats ended up being taller than the actual dwarves wearing them. We all made a lot of different, lots of different shapes, like crazy tiered wedding cakes, but they were great fun to make. And John Stallard says, were you having a laugh or just pushing it a bit? And he was, well, I was, yeah, but then Rick was playing along as well, so every time I'd show them to him, he'd giggle and go, no, bigger. They need to be bigger. And then Michael Perry said, oh yeah, I can imagine somebody else who would say, make them bigger. And Robin said, well, Brian Ansell was based over in America at the time, and Rick had to keep him informed as to how the Chaos Dwarfs were progressing. And the way Rick tells it, he would be on the phone to Brian in the US saying, well, the hats are actually quite big, Brian. And Brian would just push back and say, nonsense, it's the Perrys. They'll make them traditional. They make them historically accurate. Told them to make the hats bigger. And Rick tried to explain, well, they were quite large already, Rick. But Brian wouldn't have any of it, and he insisted that Rick instructed you to make the hats bigger. And after all this toing and froing, the whole crazy saga ended with Rick faxing photographs of the Chaos Dwarfs to Brian, who immediately got on the phone and shouted down the line, "What the hell is going on with those hats? You're all taking the piss." And Alan said that would be Brian all over. And then, of course, he'd say, "I never told you to make them bigger." So that is the story of the Chaos Dwarf hats.
That's such a weird army. They have such a unique position in the hobby. Like there's a small percentage of people that absolutely love them. They think they're like one of the best armies and one of the best aesthetics that they've ever had. And then there's another group of people that cannot stand them and think that they are terrible.
Yeah.
They're one of those armies like there's nobody's neutral on the Chaos Dwarves.
Right. Yep.
Like I don't know anybody that's like, oh, Chaos Dwarves, I mean, yeah, whatever. Like I don't know any. They're either it's like, oh, I love those models, or oh, I hate those models.
Right. Where do you think I fall?
I feel like you probably love those models.
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards the don't love those models.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I know that at the time when they were released, it was shortly after. So they were fairly early in 4th edition, relatively early in 4th edition. But the gnomes had disappeared from Warhammer, so there'd been a gnome list in Warhammer 3rd edition.
Yeah.
And so I just told everybody that the gnomes were inside those hats holding them up. So for every Chaos Dwarf, there are 2 gnomes inside holding the hats up.
They're just gnomes like pretending to be dwarves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. There's a section in here where they talk with Bob Naismith. Bob Naismith was one of the early sculptors who was involved in a lot of, and actually ended up being involved in a lot of the early plastics that GW did. And the cool thing is, in the book, I don't know if we'll be able to see it, but there are all sorts of...
What the hell?
So all of these tanks that they've got in here...
Those are awesome.
...are all, like, cool sci-fi vehicles that were scratch-built. This one here? No, actually, it's not. It's the one at the top, which I won't be able to show on the camera.
Keep going down, keep going down, keep going down.
There we go!
Nope.
Almost.
Sort of.
Yep. See those wheels?
Those look like shampoo bottle caps or something.
They're the lids from bottles of ink, like artist ink.
Okay.
So, yeah, Rotring is the name of the company that makes those. So that vehicle though was a Rhino prototype.
The thing with the wheels?
The thing with the wheels. So that was one of the first thing where they were testing out all sorts of crazy ideas. But what do we got? But when I was looking at the story here, where is it? Okay. Yep. So when we're talking about the when we made the first Rhino tank kit, as I'm sure you remember, we had no money. As a result, we could only afford to design and tool it as one sprue that you can then double up to make a whole model. So it's actually only half a kit. Which is
I remember the original plastic Rhino because you basically couldn't build it wrong.
Yeah, it only went together one way.
It like the side was
yep.
The side was that like trapezoid, and it didn't matter which one you used. It just mattered which one was the front, then you put headlights on it.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. So they did that with the Rhino and the when they made the Land Raider kit. That same sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it said Robin Jew said, and then of course we all got although we all knew it was only half a kit, we got the editorial team to write up a description of how the Rhino was created using the Imperial Standard Construction Template, or Standard Template Construct, STC, an artificially intelligent computer database created during the Dark Age of technology and built on the Forge World of Mars in order to justify it all. And so that is all now part of the Warhammer 40,000 background.
It was great.
Yep.
I remember, so my first GW models that I bought from the UK were like I think I've told the story before. I was at like a D&D convention and I bought a box. I bought the RTB01 box. I bought that in person.
Yep.
And then I wanted more stuff, so I want to say like a year later or something, I was in a hobby shop and I grabbed another issue of White Dwarf.
Yep.
And they had a thing in the back. You know, they always do mail order. They would always have ads for mail order.
Right.
So they had an ad for they were having a fire damage sale. So apparently there was a small fire in the warehouse in at the original warehouse, and the fire brigade came and they put out the fire, and so some stuff got water damaged.
Right.
So they couldn't sell the packages because they were water damaged, but they were just going to blow everything out. So they were like, we can't tell you the condition it's in, but like here's what's available. So I ordered a Land Raider, a Rhino, and I think like 2 blisters of like the character Marines.
Yep.
Like the guy with the chainsword and like the captain who's pointing or something like that. I ordered just a couple of like the metal guys.
Yep.
So the metal guys came in like a little Ziploc because the obviously the cardboard like blisters all got water damaged.
Yep.
So it was just like the miniatures.
Yep.
And then I got and they had put slaughter bases in the bag.
Yep.
And then the Rhino was actually in the best shape of the 3. So the Rhino didn't have a bottom box.
Okay.
Like they had taken the cover
Yep.
and put everything in it in a bag,
Right.
and then rubber banded it into the box.
Okay.
But other than that, it was fine. I built it. It was great.
Yep.
The Land Raider was missing 1 sprue.
Oh, right. Okay.
So instead of, I was going to build it as a wreck,
Yep.
but instead I was like, oh, I can make this work. So I used Plasticard and I split the track.
Right,
So it had
okay.
1 skinny track on each side with Plasticard. But if you turned it sideways, it looked normal. I was like, oh, I have a Land Raider.
Yeah. Nice. Nice.
Oh, and I got my brother a box of squats, like the actual box of squat guardsmen.
Yeah. Excellent. Cool. Just running back. Just says Adrian Wood and Paul Sawyer had one of my top 5 favorite bat reps, which had a lot of 3rd edition prototype rules included.
Yep.
Actually, Paul Sawyer talks about Adrian Wood. Paul and Robin talk about Adrian in here. Ryan says, cool and stupidly talented. Dude, that left-handed dedication the Perrys have is like Christian Bale in The Prestige. Super hardcore. Sean says, I wish they'd do a made to order for the Green Knight.
They might. Who knows?
Yep.
With the old world stuff coming, they might.
Yep. And I think we got a little bit of a glitchy audio again.
Really?
Yeah. I'm hearing a little bloop, 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 bloop. Whether it's my voice coming through your microphone or the other way around.
I will check my settings again, but
Cool. We'll push on through it. But and Sean says, hello. Jeff Smith loves Chaos Dwarves. Of course you do, Jeff.
hey,
Yep. Chris said a theory that an old friend of mine had, who was a Chaos Dwarf player, was that the Chaos Dwarf heads were filled with helium, so they needed the hats so big they wouldn't float away. That's a possibility as well. John says, I'm glad the Rhino ended up the way it did. Sure did. Sure it's good. Bob Naismith was on the painting phase, and he said that he sculpts now in VR with goggles and stuff on a 1-to-1 scale, if I recall. That's super cool. Yeah, Bob Naismith is still super active, doing a lot of sculpting. I think he has a Patreon as well. Lots of sci-fi stuff, hardcore sci-fi stuff.
is that better? Are you still getting audio feedback?
I don't think so. I don't think I'm... Nope, I can't hear myself now.
I turned down my mic's sensitivity.
Ah, okay. That could be it. Sean says, Man of War was my first GW models in the Dwarf fleet. Very cool. Just says, I always got those White Dwarfs 3 months too late. Oh. And Jim said that's the only GW sale I ever heard of. No, there have been plenty of others. But the next one I was going to...
That was way back in the day. That was like, I mean, there were only like six or seven plastic boxes. It was like RTB01, whatever the Guardsman box was.
Yep.
There was the well, it was probably second edition. So it was like the Guardsman box, the Orc box. I don't even think the Eldar had plastic models at that point.
No, the Eldar didn't. But the Guard
So it was
Guard and the Orcs and the Marines were all during Rogue Trader.
And then there was a Squats box.
Yep.
And then the Rhino, and then the Land Raider.
Yep.
And then I think that's it. I don't think anything else was plastic.
For 40K, yeah, that was it. I think you're right.
But like that's all there. When I did that mail order sale, that's all the plastic boxes that there were. Remember, there was the White Dwarf article where you could make a land speeder out of a speed stick.
Yep. Yep.
And they showed you how to do it, and I was like, oh, that's great.
Yep. The one of the other things I think Bob might have mentioned this in the painting phase interview as well. We're talking about the Space Marine backpack, and the reason it has that is that sort of shape, because it's since those first plastics, it's kind of been that shape, because it's based on the World War I U.S. Army backpack. So it's got that tall, sort of thin look like that. But then the bedroll, blanket roll across the top.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Hung down at the sides. So it had that little bend and sort of stuck out the sides. And that became the exhaust. So the little exhaust packs or jet packs or whatever you wanted to do.
We are not having Robin and John join us today. That would have been great. John, I probably could have called John Stallard, but it's like, what, 2 a.m. right now?
No,
so probably not.
It's quarter to 1 a.m. quarter to 1 in the morning for them. No, sorry, mate. Yeah, Josh is in Japan, so Crown of Command. But yeah, it would have been lovely to have them on. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to suffice by reading some of this and talking about our own reminiscences. But definitely feel free to jump in.
Maybe next year, if Dave and I continue to get a lot of support, and we get like some more backers, maybe next year we can go over to Salute or Stripe or Salute and get John to like come down the street and hang out with us for a couple hours.
That would be cool. But yeah, so there's that from Bob Naismith. We talked to Trish Carden as well. Trish, when she was at GW, was Trish Morrison, married to Ali Morrison. They split up quite a while ago, but they did all sorts of cool things. And then I knew that they'd worked on Marauder Miniatures, and the Marauder Miniatures was associated somehow with GW, but I wasn't 100% on the full story. But Trish has also done a lot of the fantastic beasts and creatures and monsters and stuff. Became her speciality. But Robin Hughes said, one of the things we haven't talked about is Marauder Miniatures. In late 1988, there was an announcement in White Dwarf saying that you and Ali would be forming your own company, Marauder Miniatures. And then a bit later on, the Marauder Rangers were all absorbed back into Citadel. Tell us that story. How did Marauder come about? And they actually have the picture of the White Dwarf page with the announcement. And in that section, it says, over the past 5 years, Trish and Ali Morrison have created some of Citadel's finest miniatures, but recently they've decided to spread their wings and venture into the harsh world of commercial enterprise on their own behalf. It seems the time has come for them to leave the protection of their comfortable nest in the Nottingham Design Studio and work in their own miniatures company. Marauder, as the company is called, will be producing a wide range of fantasy and science fiction miniatures, starting with orcs, goblins, and dwarves. We have a sneak preview of the first releases and can assure you that they show all the craft and skill you'd expect from two of the country's most prolific and popular designers. But Trish goes on to say, well, as I said, Ali and I had sculpted together for a long time. Over that period, we developed similar styles and learned techniques from each other, so it was just obvious that we were a good team. At the same time, and for reasons that I could never really understand, there was a bit of a backlash going on against Games Workshop and Citadel Miniatures. The business had become very successful following the release of Warhammer 3rd Edition, Yeah, Warhammer 3rd Edition and 40k, or Rogue Trader. Under Brian's control, White Dwarf had also become increasingly focused solely on Games Workshop's games and miniatures, and many people in the industry resented this. They saw us as a monopoly, or the evil empire. You have to remember that back then, the fantasy games industry was a bit of a village, especially in the UK, and I suppose that a few people just took exception to Games Workshop's and Brian's success. Due to this attitude, there are quite a few outlets, often hobbyist-run shops, that decided to no longer stock Citadel Rangers, so Brian came up with this idea of creating a separate company, Marauder Miniatures. Ali and I moved out of the design studio and set it up on our own in a little office in Derby Terrace in Nottingham. We were also given a royalty deal where we were both paid a bonus based on the percentage of overall sales of Marauder. So they go on to talk about... so they had their own salesperson. Including that. So one of them was Mark Farr, who is one of the guys who runs Footsore Miniatures. And we had, where was it? So Colin Dixon also sculpted for Marauder. Colin came in and sculpted us for us for a while. As far as the world was concerned, we'd left GW and we were focusing on producing our own miniature ranges for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. It's just that we were never fully, really independent. All of our miniatures were cast and packed up at the main factory. The studio produced our adverts for White Dwarf and so on. These days, he'd just call it a brand subdivision. Brian always liked to play his cards close to his chest. I enjoyed it. We had a lot of freedom to create our own designs. It was just a great time.
Yeah, it was weird. I remember when they used to make stuff, I just assumed it was just a different range.
Right, okay.
Because for lack of a better term, it was just a different studio team.
Right, yep.
But I remember the Marauder Ogres and like the Marauder Beastmen were like some of my favorite models. Like,
the Marauder Dwarves were a spectacular range. Absolutely awesome.
They're really good.
Yeah, that whole period there.
Yeah, Josh said, I love the Marauder range of miniatures. My first ever metal models were a Marauder multi-part Ogre and a blister of Dwarf Slayers. Wonderful characters to the miniature range Ali and Trish produced. Yeah, I remember even when we stocked stuff in the store, and on the back of the blisters it would say Marauder.
Right. Yep. Sometimes there were still
some of the like the Ogre Hero, the guy with the fur hat, like kicking down the door, like on the back of the blister, they had the darker backing, and it said Marauder.
Yep.
Didn't they have? I think they had one that was like a checkerboard almost. And my screen's gonna make me really, really light while I look this up.
Gonna go and check it out. I don't know, but yeah, loads of lovely stuff there. But yeah, that multi-part Ogre was definitely super cool, Josh. Awesome.
Yeah, the black and white backing. It was like red on the left and black on the right. It said Marauder up the top.
Yep. Had the skull with the dagger in its mouth. Then
like the trolls were great.
The Marauder Giant, yep, definitely cool. Rick Priestley, they interviewed Rick, of course, and as it in there, I'm gonna hold this up. Hopefully, I can get it to the thing. This is a classic image. There we go.
That's a sweet mullet.
It is a sweet mullet, isn't it? So that was, oops. So that's from 1987. Is the mighty dark-winged avenging Lord of Chaos, Brian Ansell, with his mighty avenging Chaos army. So with the sweet mullet and the cut-off sleeves, very hard rock kind of look. But so there are images like that in the Warhammer Armies book for 3rd edition. And John Stallard said the whole thing was just hugely aspirational. Roman Jews said, completely, those images of Brian, Mighty Darkwing, Avenging Lord of Chaos, Ansel, Kev Adams, Dave Andrews, and Pete Taylor were just amazing. Funny thing is, I went back to look at the book again quite recently, and although in my memory and imagination there were photos like that for all of the armies, that's actually not the case. There are no shots for Empire, Dwarves, Wood Elves, or High Elves. And Rick Priestley said, well, of course, the irony is that I'm not sure that all those armies actually belonged to those people. Kev certainly didn't have an army, and he was a sculptor, not a gamer. Brian, of course, did have the Chaos Army, but I'm not sure about Pete or Dave at that time. I might be wrong. It's all so long ago. And Robin said, I'm sure you're right, Rick, but as marketing, it was pure genius. It just shouted out, this is wargaming, this is fantasy wargaming, this is Warhammer, and this is a design studio. Look at these people, they're doing exactly what you want to do. And it's like, yep, absolutely. Remember that. It's, they talked to Rick Priestley, they talked to Andy Chambers, of course. And loads and loads of book covers and battle report pictures, all that sort of thing for Andy, which is excellent. Andy's somebody we might be able to get on the show. But then Jervis as well, Jervis Johnson, and this might have been a bit of a thing for me, but do you know Ben Elton at all? Do you recognize the name Ben Elton? Somebody in the chat's bound to. Scott, I think, will recognize the name Ben Elton. Ben Elton's a British comedian who's been around since the 80s. And he wrote a lot of the British comedy series in the 80s and 90s. Like, he was involved in Red Dwarf. He was involved in The Young Ones. There are a bunch of other things, but he apparently for Thames Television did a show that included sitting down and playing D&D with Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone, and Jervis Johnson, which is pretty cool. So there's like a super young Jervis Johnson. He was a script writer
for Blackadder as well. I love
Blackadder. Sure, yeah, Blackadder. Totally forgot. Yep, he was involved in that. But yeah, very funny guy, and so I had to include that.
Jim says, easy posting those pictures, Dave. My wife watches this. I don't want her leaving me for Ansel.
Fantastic, Jim. I don't think she will. He doesn't quite look like that today.
Jim, I feel like Jim could pull that look off.
Jim needs to...
He could grow out the lettuce, do a little hockey hair, grow that mustache.
Yep. Then I need to post the photos in the group. That'll be good. But, yeah, so I think that was from 1983. So Jervis Johnson was working for Games Workshop before, but when it was still separate from Citadel Miniatures. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny listening, sort of reading the story. Jervis's story. He started off as a trade salesman as well for Games Workshop. And he had a few ideas about some games, and when they talked about maybe making some board games, he was like, oh, what about this one? Or what about that one? But his, where is it? But in the way he speaks in this interview is a super modest guy. And so they talked about... So I was still working in trade sales when I designed the first version of Blood Bowl in my spare time. Worked it up to a playable prototype and showed it to Brian. And he liked it and just said, this seems okay. We're going to go with this. Then I then got Mark Gascoigne involved to be the editor and Ali Morrison to do the graphics and create the look of the players. Robin Jew said, I remember because I have a signed copy of that first edition. It came with little card stand-ups for the players, but no miniatures. Did Ali draw all of those? Jervis, John Stallard said, yes, he did. There were no plastic miniatures or even metal miniatures to start off with, so the three of us beavered away. It must have been Jervis saying this, actually. Three of us beavered away at this game, which was first released in 1986. And it was off the back of that game that Brian moved me from trade sales in Eastwood to work in the studio in Enfield Chambers as a kind of manager of board games development. When I got there to work on a whole range of different kinds of projects, Blood Bowl came out, and then there was Adeptus Titanicus, which was my first proper miniatures game. At the same time, I was also commissioning games, so something like Chainsaw Warrior was sent in by Steve Hand. I just loved it. I thought it was a great idea for a game, and we just had to produce it. Steve was also a lovely guy and really talented and very innovative designer. Around the same time, we also published Blood Royale and Warrior Knights, both by Derek Carver, who was another clever chap. From you said, didn't Steve Hand also design Fury of Dracula and the Curse of the Mummy's Tomb? I think you probably would have heard of Fury of Dracula. I think,
Yep.
Yeah, Fantasy Flight did a re-release of that.
Yes, they did.
About 7 or 8 years ago. Joe said, yes, that's right. In fact, Steve actually ended up getting a job at Games Workshop. He joined the studio for a while. Wasn't there terribly long, as I think he missed his independence, but Fury of Dracula was brilliant. And John Stallard said, Joe, can I stop you? I think you've been very modest about Blood Bowl. That game has been a monstrous hit for Games Workshop for years. Is there a current edition? Is it back in the line? Jeff was like, yes it is. And so how many years is that? 35? Going on 40 years? Something like that has been a monster success. There have been innumerable iterations of the game with cardboard teams, metal teams, plastic teams, resin teams. It's been a huge hit. And for years, we'd have it on sale for a year or so, and then it would be deleted from retail and trade. And then after a short while, there would be this clamor to bring Blood Bowl back. And we would, and it'd be great whooping and cheering. It's just a fantastic game, and people really love it. So, definitely
Is he
super
still
cool.
like? So you might be able to answer this. Does he still get like a royalty for that,
I'm really not sure.
or because he worked for Games Workshop at the time and it's a Games Workshop game?
I'm really not at all sure. I think the miniature sculptors have always been on some sort of royalty scheme. And I think at some point, actually, I think Mike McVeigh might have mentioned in there that the Heavy Metal team were on some sort of royalty scheme as well for the box art. So essentially, the box art miniatures they were doing. So to encourage them to do a really good job, kind of thing. But who was I talking to? Was I talking to you? No. Yeah, I was talking to somebody. No, talking to Brendan Bell. Good old Brendan Bell that used to work with the Games Workshop. And he'd been talking with Gary Morley. And at one point, I think just before 3rd edition Blood Bowl, Gary was essentially given... They were like, I'm not sure how this is going to go. Gary will get you to do all the Blood Bowl teams. So Gary Morley sculpted a whole bunch of the Blood Bowl teams for 3rd edition. And Blood Bowl 3rd edition launched, and it was a huge success, absolutely massive, and he was making bank off that. And Games Workshop eventually went, hey, how about we just, rather than like providing you these royalties in perpetuity, how about we just buy you out? So they bought out his royalty agreement, and then apparently about a year later, they sales tanked and they took it off sale. But yeah, big chunk of time there for Blood Bowl.
I remember. Yeah, I mean it's been around. It's been around forever. Like the new versions that just came out, they just re-released Dungeon Bowl.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was like, what? So like Dungeon Bowl's back out. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. The new teams are gorgeous. The new sculpts are phenomenal.
Absolutely fantastic.
There's a new vampire team that just came out, or it comes out this Saturday.
Yep.
It looks incredible. The skink team from a couple of months ago looks amazing. The Nurgle team looks awesome. Like all the sculpts are great.
Yep.
Speaking of Mike McVeigh, one of my I don't want to say least favorite because it's not a terrible model, but like one of my least favorite Space Marine sculpts is probably his Captain Cortez. It was the first Space Marine model that I think he did.
Right.
And the problem with doing a lot of the metals,
Yep.
where by that point they had like the plastic Jess Goodwin Tactical Squad out, which is,
Right. Yep.
for my money, one of the best skits ever made. And Cortez is like noticeably smaller than them.
Yep.
And he's got like, it's like his armor's too small. Like the cuffs of his boots aren't big enough, so it looks like he's wearing like he's in like high water. He's trying to keep his pants from getting wet.
Yep.
But that model, we sold a ton of it because it was one of the only ways to get a right-handed power fist.
Right. Yep.
So people would buy Captain Cortez, snip his arm at the shoulder, and then do like conversions and stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, we are always ordering that mini. And I was like, why are we selling so many? Nobody's running Captain Cortez. Then I was like, oh, they all want a power fist.
Right-handed power fist.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Just as Jervis designed some of my all-time favorite games: Advanced Hero Quest, Epic Space Marine, and Blood Bowl. So yeah, absolutely, loads of awesome games and bits and pieces in there.
Well, Blood Bowl's out now. I don't know what edition it is. They're going to re-release Epic Space Marine. It's not going to be called Epic Space Marine, but it's called whatever it is, Imperialis.
Legions Imperialis.
Yeah, Legion Imperialis. And then Hero Quest just got reprinted. They just removed all the GW stuff from it. It's the same game.
Yep, exactly. And this also has the little story. I think we might have talked about it before, about Adeptus Titanicus. Again, GW only having enough money for one sprue, which was the Warlord Titan, and then working out how they were going to have Warlord Titans fighting Warlord Titans.
Dude, the Beetleback Warlord to this day is still one of my favorite kits.
Yep, it is super
I
cool.
had like 7 of them.
It's meant that you'd have only have the same giant robot fighting on both sides, which just didn't sound very promising. Then, while looking through the book of the Astronomicon, which Rick had written and published as the first supplement to 40k, we found this tiny boxed-out reference to the Emperor throwing Warmaster Horus into the Eye of Terror by his heel, because there had been a civil war. So we just thought, that sounds useful. Why don't we use that? We then have robots fighting robots in the Civil War back at the beginning of the Imperium. With that as the background story, it wouldn't matter if you had the same models fighting on both sides. And so Adeptus Titanicus came out, and you got the frame with the different weapons. And had to design rules that allowed these robots to fight each other and be a reasonably entertaining game.
Titanicus was fun. Remember, in almost like before HeroClix, I remember in the bases, they had the wheel.
Yep.
The number wheel. You'd like build the model, and you put this little number card in, and then you put the bottom of the base on, like you snapped it together, and it kept track of the wounds or the shields on the Warlord, was the void shields.
Yep. I think you might have had two. Might have had a shields and a.
Yeah, I mean, even the new Titanicus is awesome. It is like one of the best rule sets they have. That game is incredible.
Yep.
I went down a rabbit hole looking at all the old Marauder pictures
as well. Blood Bowl.
Huh?
There's a bit about Dark Future in there. Jervis. They talked to Jervis for a long time. Tony Ackland.
I never played Dark Future. Dark Future was one of the few GW games I didn't play.
Yeah, I never played it, but I read the novels. It's definitely good. Yeah, Tony Ackland did a lot of fantastic art in those early days. He did a lot of the little line art drawings. There we go. So a lot of cool stuff from that we would have seen in White Dwarf and in the Warhammer Armies books. Definitely cool. So that's book 1, which is
those are great.
230 some pages. And then book 2.
I do get a kick out of the fact that they basically like Frankenstein the lore together.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I want to say it had to be like 3rd edition, I think, or maybe it was Rogue Trader when we got. Remember we got a metal Lehman Russ with his 2 wolves.
That was Rogue Trader. Yep.
And he's a Space Marine.
Yep.
And it's Lehman Russ, Space Wolf Commander.
Yep.
And he is the same size as all the Space Marines. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. I remember I was like, wow, that model's super neat.
Yep. Yep. It's definitely cool. Seeing how things have evolved has been amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, because back then, I'm trying to think that the biggest characters back then were like Lehman Russ. I don't mean biggest in terms of names.
Yep.
But like Lehman Russ, and he was just a Space Marine. And then Marnius Calgar. Remember the seated one?
Yep.
The one that was sitting down with the 2 power fists?
Yep.
And he was the Ultramarines commander. And you're like, okay, so there's an Ultramarines commander, there's a Space Wolves commander. And then we did get Dante. And I think that was he out he was out in 2nd edition. Because he was out in the Angels of Darkness, or the Angels of Death book.
Yep.
And then, so he was in charge of the Angels, and then we also got Azrael.
Right. Yep.
But that was it. Like at that point, Lehman Russ isn't a Primarch. Like, those 4 are just like the Space Marine commanders.
Yep. Yep. Excellent.
Oh, God. The Metal Thunderhawk.
I was going to say, Dave Hummel didn't say hi. Hi, Dave. If I didn't, Welcome,
What's up,
welcome.
Dave?
Josh said there are a couple of those metal space marines that were slightly smaller than the Jez Goodwin Marines, the Power Fist Sergeant being
there's a
another one.
bunch.
Yep. Sean says, I have one which is a rescue. I'm assuming he was talking about Titans there.
Yeah,
Could be a
it's
Cortez.
Warlord.
Hopefully it's not Cortez. Josh says, aren't these the same model? Nope. This one has spikes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Matt Bowles is here. Hey, Matt. Hi, guys. Hope things are going well. They are. Remember the Metal Thunderhawk?
You.
Yep. Dave says, I have one of those. Oh, it was one of the toilet Calgars. Do you have one of the Metal Thunderhawks, Dave? I can't remember if I told you the story, but in 98, I think, so I was working in the promotion studio in Australia, and we were sent 2 Metal Thunderhawks. And because this was such a huge, amazing thing,
Came in a custom crate that was built to hold the Thunderhawk.
right, or in the pieces of the Thunderhawk, yeah.
Yeah.
But because ours was not, ours were going to be assembled and weren't going to be kept in that locked case, we didn't get sent the cases. We just got sent the Thunderhawks. So I was given the task of assembling and painting both of those Thunderhawks, which is absolute nightmare piece. Mainly because, like, it was all metal, and the sides of it, rather than being a big flat panel, where the big flat panels were made up of smaller rectangular panels that had to be pinned together.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing had a framework inside that was held together with brass rod. It was a nightmare, but basically, yeah, I had to build 2 of them. I painted one as an Ultramarine and one as a Blood Angel Thunderhawk. And then, because we had those, the reason that we'd gotten them was so that we could send them around the country to different stores. And the stores would have this fantastic day where people could come and play a whole bunch of games. Maybe there were some sales on, and check out the Metal Thunderhawk. So I had to come up with a way to be able to send ship the Metal Thunderhawk through the mail from head office in Sydney to Melbourne or to Adelaide or to Perth or wherever.
Oh my god!
And invariably it would arrive damaged, or not in a lot of parts, but they'd cobble it back together enough to stick it in the cabinet. Nobody was allowed to touch it after that. And then they'd pull it back out, stick it back in the box, and send it back to me. And invariably, when it arrived back at me, it would be in its component pieces, so I need to rebuild it and touch up the paint.
Dude, that's crazy.
I know. It was like 4 or 5 times that I had to do that. It was crazy. What I'd done was built like custom cut foam, like a nice dense upholstery foam.
The problem is it was too heavy.
Oh yeah. No, for sure. But
Like putting it in foam is great, but like if whoever's carrying it just drops the box,
oh yeah,
it's so heavy, its weight on itself.
The top moves through the bottom of the
yeah,
thing.
like,
Yeah. But
yeah, Sean's right. I think it was like 26 pounds.
It was a lot, for sure.
Did you hear the story from Adepticon?
No, which one's that?
Oh, so Chris has heard this before from me.
Yep.
This is one of my favorite stories. This is insane. So I want to say it was before COVID. So this was probably 4 years ago or 5 years ago.
Yep.
So we were at Adepticon, and there was this big sort of like hullabaloo, and there was a lot of like whispering going on. And I was like, "What happened?" And they're like, "Oh, some guy, the hotel broke his Thunderhawk." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, they broke his Thunderhawk." And I was like, "What happened?" So apparently this guy has one of the original metal Thunderhawks that he's had forever, and he repainted it now that he's an adult.
Yep.
So he had it in his room on his bed.
Right.
So the cleaning staff came in and picked it up and put it on the, like the
bench.
the counter where the TV is.
The side
like
table,
the wardrobe.
Yep.
They set it there, and then they were like vacuuming, and it like fell off the wardrobe.
Right.
And broke into God knows how many pieces. So the
238.
staff,
No counting.
Sure.
Sure.
So I would assume less than that. because I don't think it shattered into a million pieces, but it broke.
Yeah.
So the staff panicked, and they exited the room, went down to the counter, and explained to the management staff like what happened.
Yep.
So the management staff was like, "Oh, it's fine. We'll just look up the customer's name, figure out whose room this is, page that person." So they do that. They page this guy, and he comes to the counter and he's like, "What's going on? Somebody paged me. They said there was an emergency in my room." And he's like, "Oh yeah," and they explain what happened.
Yep.
And I can only imagine this guy's face,
Yep.
just like falling. And so the manager sees what's going on and goes, "I'm so sorry. Obviously, this is our fault. Like, we will pay to replace it." And the guy's like, "There's no way to replace that."
Yep.
And they're like, "Oh, well, we'll do whatever." And he's like, they don't make it anymore. It's not a thing you can replace. Like, that's a
Yep.
kit from whatever that was,
97. 1997.
Okay, so he's like, "There's no way to get that." So he's like, "Well, then could we pay for a replacement or something like that?" And he's like, "Sure." And he's like, "It's $2,400." And they were like, "Well, there's no way." And he's like, "Yep." And they're like, we need to see that." And he's like, "You can come with me right now. Forge World is downstairs. They will show you how much it costs, and you can just pay them, and they can just give me a Thunderhawk." So apparently there was this big like, "Oh, I don't know, that's way more than we thought it was going to be." Like, they thought it was a toy. They were like, "Oh, it'll be a couple $100."
Yeah.
So after this big back and forth, they finally agreed to do it. The hotel manager came downstairs, talked to, I'm assuming, like Pete or Adam or James or one of the guys at Forge World. It was probably James at the time.
Right.
And explain how much it was and explain what happened. So they paid for a new one. So now I'm like, now he has one of the new resin Forge World Thunderhawks, and he has this metal Thunderhawk. And I was like, well, that's cool. You have two Thunderhawks. I was like, but my soul hurts just thinking that he's going to rebuild that metal one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Nobody should ever have to do that twice. Yep.
I don't even know how he got it to Adepticon. Like, unless he lives locally, there's no way I would take that to Adepticon.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Put it in like a baby seat, like strap it in.
Not even that. Amusingly enough, the first story here that I was going to tell from book 2 is titled, my post-it note is titled "Busted Golden Demon Minis." So, here we go.
Just a busted Thunderhawk? That's awful.
No, it's talking about, so it's talking with Mike McVeigh, but it's a story that Robin Jews recounts. Robin Jews said, "I've just reminded of a funny, more comic, tragic story about the Golden Demon competition. Do you remember how originally we would collect all of the winning entries at the event in Birmingham or wherever, and a member of staff, probably one of the retailer area managers, would be given the responsibility of getting them safely back to Eastwood in his car? The event was normally held on a Sunday, and so on the following Monday morning, they would be sent from Eastwood over to the studio so we could get on with photographing them for the feature in White Dwarf. This must have been the early 90s, 91 or 92, because the studio had moved to Castle Boulevard, and I was in charge of White Dwarf at the time. So these miniature cases, full of beautiful Golden Demon winning models, were all dropped off at reception by a taxi, and then brought over to my desk. Well, I opened a couple of the cases, and everything was fine. But when I lifted the lid on the third, I couldn't believe my eyes. They were just full of broken bits of miniature. There were heads missing and banners snapped off. There was a war eagle with its wings broken off. It was horrifying. And so, of course, I get on the phone to Eastwood and say, "What the hell happened to these miniatures?" They insisted that they'd checked the cases that morning before they'd sent them over, and all the models had been fine. So we got in touch with the taxi firm, and they finally got a confession out of the driver, who said that when he'd pulled up outside the studio, he'd accidentally dropped one of the cases. Not only did he drop it, but the case fell open and deposited its precious cargo into the street outside. He had no idea what they were, so he just scooped them up and shoved them back into the case, and left it at the studio reception without saying a word. The bit I remember is just most is just opening the figure casing and going, "Oh shit." We handed all these broken miniatures over to you, Mike McVeigh, and the heavy metal team, and said, "Fix these. Put them back together as fast as you can." I think that you even had to send some of you guys outside to search the gutter, and we found a few more of the missing pieces. We never got found out, though, so you must have done a good job.
Can you imagine being Mike McVeigh, and they just, give you a bunch of busted shit?
Yep. Amazing. So, there was one time when I was running Golden Demon in Baltimore, and somebody was moving a model it had already been entered. They were moving a model. It was a Bretonian Pegasus Knight, and they dropped it, and it shattered. Just like before judging had started, and it was like, okay, let's find out who that person is. We got the person's name. We paged them, and we brought them over and said, "We are super sorry. We are so sorry that this has happened." And they were like, "Oh, these things happen. It's okay." So they.
Oh my god.
We gave them some glue, and they reassembled it there and entered it back in the competition. It was terrible. These things happen. Yep. Amazing. Then there's a bit in here, Mike McVeigh talking about the dioramas. And sort of how they came about. But essentially, some of the most famous dioramas, like the Horus diorama, I think, and the so the Horus diorama, Emperor versus Horus, was based on the artwork by Adrian Smith.
Yeah, Adrian
Smith. The
Smith.
Original artwork by Adrian Smith. And so he'd used a whole bunch of minis, kit bashed from a whole bunch of different models and done some hand sculpting and that kind of thing. But then they sat on his desk for a bunch of years. So it wasn't like he built them and then immediately went on to making the diorama. Or it was like, hey, let's build a diorama, and then built the models. It was,
right.
He built them because they were cool, and then they sat there for a while, and then it was eventually like, hey, maybe I should. Which was a cool thing to know. But one of the other things that I found that was kind of interesting was when there's Robin Hughes talking to Paul Sawyer. So fat bloke who was one of the the longest serving editor of White Dwarf. It's kind of funny. Just quickly. Josh says, my heart hurts just hearing Broken Golden Demon entries. As if the Thunderhawk story isn't bad enough.
You never want to hear those words together.
Yep. Matt Bowles says, Horus diorama gets me to this day. So good. The marble columns and everything about it is perfect. Absolutely. Talking about the painting phase, I think Louise Sugden was just on with and talking with Chris Peach and talking about how they're able to do some cool stuff and have a lot of fun and sort of mess around. They were reminiscing about battle reports in White Dwarf and how there was a lot of freedom to be sort of fun and silly. I was going to say, Paul Sawyer actually chewed me out once for doing a fun and silly battle report. The first battle report that we did in Australia was one that we titled Crazy Joe Wears Yellow. Because it was my Praetorians playing against one of the area managers' Imperial Fists army, who was led by...
That's a lot of yellow.
Yeah, it was... He had one of the old Rogue Trader era models with crazy hair, sort of shot back, and a chainsword. Okay. And that was, in his army, that was Crazy Joe. So the battle report itself was pretty straightforward. It's just that we titled it Crazy Joe Wears Yellow. So Paul contacted me and let me know that that was not an appropriate way to present Games Workshop miniatures and the Games Workshop lore. And I was suitably chastised. But when he visited us the following year for Games Day, we were able to do another battle report. We played a battle in one of the stores, and one of my team recorded it all and photographed it and that kind of thing. And then we wrote that up, and that battle report actually made it into White Dwarfs around the world, which was pretty cool. But yep, John Stallard asked Paul Sawyer how many copies of White Dwarf would we sell worldwide? And Paul was like, I honestly couldn't remember. And Robin said, well, back in the day, we used to pay money to have the numbers audited by the Audit Bureau of Circulation. Magazines did this so they could charge more for their advertising. In the end, we just thought, we don't have any external adverts, so why bother? The last issue with a published audit was White Dwarf 187, with around 61,000 UK copies sold. But then, in addition to the UK copies, we also published White Dwarf in France, Germany, Spain, and Italy, and the English language version would be sent out to be localized and republished in Australia and North America. If you add them all up, we would be selling around 120,000 to 150,000 copies a month in 5 different languages. It's quite a big deal. But that issue 187, just happened to be...
It's got the witch elves on it.
It is, yeah, it's the Witch Elves one. And I remember I was running the Games Workshop Sydney store when that was released. And that month we sold 323 copies of White Dwarf in my store.
Everybody loves witch elves.
They do. But, of course, that was back before the internet was a thing, and people got their news from the internet. At the time, people got their news from White Dwarf. It was definitely cool. Jim says...
I'm trying to find my first issue. 127.
Your first issue was 127?
127 was the first issue I bought. It's from... what year is this?
91?
It is... It's 91, but I'm trying to think what... It's... Oh, they didn't put the month on it. No, they didn't put the month on it, did they?
Probably.
Or the...
It might have been on the inside. But yeah. Cool.
127 was my first issue. I remember because it had all of Jess Goodwin's like fantastic Eldar aspect warriors in it.
That was my first one. Same.
Like that's that was your first issue?
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah, like that was the show. I was in middle school.
Right.
So I think I was in 6th grade. I think.
I was in.
And
I was a freshman at college.
Wait, what year was it?
91.
Oh, 91. Okay, then I was a freshman. I was a freshman in high school.
Okay. Radio. There you go.
It was the summer. It was the summer between. Is that right?
No.
Yeah, it was the summer between like freshman and sophomore year, and I went away to play D&D out in Western Mass, and I bought a box of. I'd never seen GW stuff before, and there was a guy who had like a little mall kiosk thing. I think I've told you the story before.
I think so.
And I saw like a box. I saw the RTB01, the big Space Marine box.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, this is super cool. And I was like looking at the back, and the guy was like, I was like, what is this? And he's like, oh, these are called Space Marines. And I just got sucked into the world. I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yep.
And then I bought that, and I bought that issue of White Dwarf off of his booth.
Right.
And then like that was all I had. I remember looking through it being like, this is the coolest thing ever. But I thought it was like D&D.
Right.
Like I didn't know that there was like a whole game and stuff. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yep.
But that issue is awesome.
Absolutely. Jim says Mike McVeigh Blood Angel Captain conversion that looked like the 2nd edition box art was always a favorite. Absolutely. Matt Ball City, I watched that painting phase with Louise, and it sounded so different from our days at the US HQ. It did indeed. Jim said your Marienburg army that took on Fat Bloke's Cheese Beastman Chariot list was a favorite of mine. Thank you very much, Jim. And Matt says, should White Dwarf now go all digital? I don't think so. But that's the printer in me. There's somebody that loves paper. Jim says 127 Eldar White Dwarf. Matt said, do you remember our Troll magazine editions? I do. Yep, the mail order Troll magazine was absolutely awesome.
There was a period where GW made like 5 magazines.
Oh right, yeah. So like Journal, White Dwarf,
yes, you had
Journal.
Journal.
Yep.
You had White Dwarf.
Yep.
You had Troll.
Yep.
What was the other one? There's another weird one. It was like
I don't know.
Was it the Gazette? Didn't they make the Gazette or whatever? And it was like Necromunda stories. It was all short stories.
There were different times when there. Oh, that was Inferno magazine.
Yeah, so Inferno
and Warhammer Monthly.
Yeah, like I was like, it was the point you were like, I feel like there's a periodical section in my. When I was working for GW, I was like, I have a periodical section.
Yep.
Like, here's all the magazines.
Yep, exactly. They've almost said number 310 from subscription, but someone bought me number 4 for a joke. Excellent. Josh said, did the US office ever have an employee car park fight club? Matt Bowles. I mean, that might have been a significant difference right there. Not quite, but there were times when foot races were held in the US HQ parking lot, which was huge. But no, definitely cool. Where's he gone? He's disappeared.
I'm still here.
Marco!
I was trying to see if I can find. It's around here somewhere. I have one issue of Citadel Journal.
Yep.
And it's the one I always show all the time. I take pictures of. It's John Matthews has his
right.
Easy Riders army
right.
in it.
Yep.
His army, dude, it is so beardy. Like I love
sure.
Matthews. I love that guy.
Yep.
But that army, and it's gotta be second edition, right? His army is gross.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's 5 bikes, 5 bikes, 5 bikes. One squad has a chaplain, one squad has a captain, and then each squad has an attack bike. So like his whole army is super fast and almost unkillable. Like it's nuts.
Yep. Absolutely, John would see. One thing I was going to say is as well. Somebody was asking before about like would they do a US version? Come and talk to the US folks.
James is right. There was Town Crier also.
Town Crier, Town Crier for Mordheim.
Mordheim magazine.
Yep. So in this book, they also spoke with Mike McVeigh. They spoke with Paul Robbins. Paul Robbins won Slayer Swords in 91 and 92, but then he went on to run the factory at Eastwood before it moved to Lenton. And one of his Slayer Sword winning entries was, we talked about the Marauder Giant before.
That giant's great.
Yep, super cool.
Because for a long time, even when we stocked Warhammer Fantasy Battles, I think when I was at the company, it was like 5th edition, 6th edition, 7th edition.
Yep.
For a while, until they did the plastic one, that was the giant.
Yep, absolutely. But so they talked Paul, Robin Hughes, Alan Merritt, Anthony Epworth, Tim Pollard, Richard Ellard. So Matt Bowles will recognize Richard's name. So Richard was an Englishman who moved to the US and did a lot of work building the US business. He actually still lives in the US, loves his fishing, but he's been retired for a while. Chris Harbour is also in here. Chris spent a bunch of time as the company chaplain.
Yeah, I remember Chris Harbour.
Yep. So not so much as the sort of Christian chaplain you would expect, but he would travel around the world visiting the businesses to check on the spiritual health of everybody, see if they were still fit for the business. I
think I met him once, either at Glen Burnie for something, or at like a games day.
Right.
I think.
I know that he came out to Australia a couple of times, but one time he brought out the some sprues of the Orc War Bike just before that was released. And when we were going to put it together, with some super glue. And he goes, "Why aren't you using the polystyrene cement?" And he says, "Well, it's not very good. It doesn't hold things particularly well." And he goes, "You're just not using it right." So we should have not using the GW polystyrene cement on the plastic. So it's kind of funny, but Chris...
I will say, as an adult, I almost exclusively use polystyrene cement. I hate using super glue.
Yeah.
I hate it. I only use it if I have to.
Yeah, I've got the Ravel there, the Jameer there.
It's all the same. Polystyrene cement is polystyrene cement. It's a
Look,
polyacrylate. It's a chemical reactant that melts plastic. That's it. There's no glue.
sure. But they are different, though, because this is thick. And this is very thin. But yeah, you're right. They do the same thing. And I've got my super glue. Which is there. Both my medium and my thin.
My least favorite thing in the world has got to be zip kicker.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Like, apparently I'm one of the only people that, like, did okay in chemistry. Like, kids will come into the store. I remember when I was still at GW, and they'd be like, "Oh, do you guys sell zip kicker?" And I was like, "We don't." And they were like, "Oh, I'm going to have to go to the hobby store and get some." And I was like, "Don't get it." And they were like, "Why?" And I was like, it weakens the bond.
Yep.
And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "So when you use super glue,
Yep.
it is a crystalline matrix. So it wants to make something that works in two directions. This is the direction. It doesn't work this way. Or it just works this way, and then it doesn't work this way. It only wants to work in one plane." I was like, when you use the accelerant, it makes it hurriedly make a crystalline structure, so it's super brittle. So you can break it much easier because it didn't have time to bond. Like, you are basically having it hurry up. And the kids were like, "Oh yeah, like I use zip kicker, dries right away." I was like, "Yeah, but how many times have you had to glue it?" And they're like, "Probably 6 or 7 times." I was like, "Right, because you're not letting it do its job.
Just do it
Just
once.
leave it alone.
Do it once.
Just leave it alone."
Exactly. Cool. Well, I think it's time for us to move on. Sorry, I just... Okay.
Sean gets it. Sean gets it. If I have to use super glue, Loctite gel,
Yeah.
the Loctite super gel, or the Gorilla Glue super gel, that's the best stuff.
Yeah. Matt says, I was addicted to zip kicker for a long time. Yeah.
It smells weird too. I also hate the smell of it.
So...
Let's see some pictures.
We've talked. Yeah, let's have a look at some pictures. Let's stop looking at our faces and me reading books. But anyway, just before we do that, I'm going to say Talking Miniatures, fantastic books. There is a link in the notes below to the Warlord website where you can pick it up, and I think you can also get it on Amazon. So you can check out either of those if you are interested. And I think the second book is like 230 odd pages as well. So definitely. Super cool. And they come in a... Oh, I don't have it within reach. They come in a slipcase. Yep, which is nice.
Scott, get it together. Like, if you were building the old gyrocopter, I would just pin that. I'd pin that monster.
Excellent.
Get out my little pin vise, drill a couple holes, get a bunch of rubber bands.
Okay, so jumping into miniatures from the Facebook group. So first up, we have this awesome Fugan from painted by Cammy Brown. I think it's Cammy's first post in the group. But yeah, looking lovely. Got that wonderful flame ombre going on.
That's super old school. Like that.
Yeah.
If that had a goblin green base, I could see that in a White Dwarf magazine.
Absolutely. That's funny you should say it that way. But also, it's kind of amusing because we just talked about our first White Dwarves with the wonderful Jez Goodwin sketches. Yep. Next up, we have a couple of minis from Chris Gorka. So this is from Shatterpoint, Star Wars Shatterpoint. So this is where I'm going to have to show my...
I think it's the Inquisitor's box.
Yep. That's what he said in the thing. My first thought, I haven't seen these before. Are they? I'm not sure which show they're from.
They're from
one of the animated shows.
No, they're from the live action Obi-Wan.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah. I think I've only watched the bit. I saw the first part of Obi-Wan where he like gets on a train and goes out somewhere and cuts up food and then catches the train back. And I was like,
you should watch the rest of it because it's not just that.
it's not just that. It felt like there was a lot of that. I'm sure I watched the first 2 episodes, and it felt like he was doing that a lot. There was a lot of commuting.
Very little of that.
Okay, radio. I will go on to watch the rest of it then. But yeah, when I saw these from Chris, A, it's super cool. But B, I just thought, oh, so did they just go, everyone loves Darth Maul. Everyone loves that double-ended lightsaber. Let's give everybody double-ended lightsabers.
So supposedly, like, the Inquisitors, the Sith Inquisitors carry that. Like, they all carry it.
Yeah. Yep. I noticed that everybody in that squad had that. But this was super cool, too.
Yeah, that's great. This guy sucks. Like, he's my least favorite guy. Like, out of the 4 characters, because he has that stupid hat. But Chris's paint jobs are phenomenal. Like, that looks like red hot molten steel after having a plasma blade pass through it. Pretty neat.
I gotta say, I like the hat. I think we're gonna obviously, like, our opinions on hats differ.
You're a Chaos Dwarf fan, so.
Well, no, I said I don't like the Chaos Dwarf hats.
Yeah, but now I don't believe you because you like this hat.
Well, it doesn't mean I don't like hats. I just don't like hats that are like taller than the guy. Unless it's something for Ink 28. Justice. They also work like helicopter blades. Next one. So
outer ring spin.
Yep. Great work there. Great work there, Chris. Next up, we've got Dave Hummel's work in progress shrine to Saint Sabat. And the Emperor there. And speaking of some polystyrene cement, Dave is prepped for his next couple of Space Marine companies.
Nice.
But yeah, coming along nicely there, Dave. Looking good. Looking forward to seeing what you do with the straight silver. Very cool. Excellent. Scott says, I watched an episode of this cartoon Star Wars and those spinny Sith lightsabers were being used as helicopters, like Inspector Gadget. So lame.
So I haven't watched any of like the animated stuff.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that that's not true because that seems really dumb.
Yeah, so not having seen it, I would just say, yeah, that's terrible. I wonder why they did that.
Don't like them.
Next up, we've got a couple of pieces from Jeff Smith. Jeff has been continuing on this Dark Angels commission. So I think we saw the Ballistus weapons last week. He's finally posted up a picture of the finished Ballistus Dreadnought, the twin las cannon and the missile pods there.
It's great. I'm a big fan of the Iron Warriors hazard stripes around all the weapons.
Right. You know, most people just call those hazard stripes rather than specifically Iron Warriors hazard stripes.
No, those are. But if you're talking 40K Space Marines, those are Iron Warriors hazard stripes.
Right. And he posted a picture of the Apothecary Biologis as well. So looking neat.
Yeah, I really like this. He's doing it the way that I'm doing my Crimson Fist one, which is that's the old Rogue Trader like version, which is they don't wear white armor. They have like some white accents.
Right.
It's normally just like the shoulder pad and the helmet.
Yeah.
So
I think for my guys, I think that my apothecaries are going to go with that same look. So wherever they've got black armor here, so the helmet and the shoulder pads will go to white, and keep the green gray on there. Final pick from Jeff Smith we have is one that you will love, Jake. It is his Mephiston.
Mephiston's a beast.
Looking beautiful. Yeah, great work there, Jeff.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Looks very nice.
His rules are still insane. He is so good.
Yep. Excellent. So excellent work there, Jeff. Thanks very much. Next up, Kelly Rowe. Kelly's been paying some more NCP. So we've got Hawkeye here. Looking great. Got that nice little purple sort of tinge there. Just adding a little bit of extra depth to that black outfit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep, very nice. And
one of the most subtle things he did, I love the
sorry.
highlights on his hair.
Yep, hang on a sec. I'm just going to switch back to it. So, subtle things he did. Highlights on the hair. Yep.
Yeah, the highlights in the hair, and like he did like a light effect across the top half of the sunglasses.
Okay. Yep.
It's really subtle, but it adds such a depth to the character's face.
Yep. Yep. No, it's absolutely awesome. Very nice. Good work, Kelly.
This is great.
That's great. And then the Ghost Rider. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah, Ghost Rider's great. That's the Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider. There's a new Cosmic Ghost Rider that came out like 3 weeks ago or something, or 4 weeks ago. But yeah, that's like the classic Ghost Rider.
Is this the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider?
Yeah, so that's who Nicolas Cage is playing is Johnny Blaze.
Okay,
so.
cool.
he's the original Ghost Rider.
Okay, cool.
I think in the comics they're on like the fourth guy.
Right.
But Johnny Blaze is the original like 1970s, 1980s like Ghost Rider.
Like the stunt rider kind of thing.
And
right. Cool. But yeah, looking great, Kelly. I love that the flames, like you put the flames. What am I saying? Having the bike and the jacket be so dark, right next to the flames, just really helps those pop. Looks awesome.
That's some Chris Gorka magic type right there.
Yep, definitely cool stuff.
One of the best parts about the Ghost Rider movies is in the second one in particular, they started doing all these like weird things. So every time, like, there's a great scene where like Ghost Rider's on the highway and he like, whips the guy with his chain and like rips the wheel off and the car flips over and like explodes. And he goes, "What is it?" He's like, "Roadkill." I was like, what? Like, so there's all these like weird comic one-liners in it. It's awesome.
Speaking of comic one-liners, Josh says if he rides past a bakery, he'll be a toast rider.
Yeah.
Nice. And Scott says Robbie Reyes is Cosmic Ghost Rider.
Danny Ketch was Ghost Rider when I was a kid, and then there was another one too. I forget who. There was another Ghost Rider for a little bit. This guy is great.
Yeah. This piece is by Mark Maxey. So awesome little Nurgle dude. I think he popped the shell on the back. We can't quite see it there, but and he's going to build up. He's going to pour some resin, so he's going to put some dams around it and pour some resin on that base, which will be super cool. But yeah, this is a cool little mini from Wereweevil Minis, which is a company out of Australia. Marcus Blackman is the guy running that and sculpting the models. Marcus used to enter Golden Demon in Australia when I was running game states back there. But yeah, definitely super cool. And Mark's done a spectacular job on this, particularly the eye.
Yep.
The iris is spectacular. Oh, yeah,
I think the only thing I would do is I would probably add a little bit of like gloss varnish. I mean, if he's gonna add resin effects, like obviously he's gonna do it, but the only thing I would do is I would add like some gloss varnish to the eye itself so it looks wet, like add it to the edges.
Yeah.
But the eye, there's so much great detail on the eye. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely super cool. Awesome work, Mark. Keep it up. Yep. Yes, Scott says, I didn't see that mini. Love it. Must have it. Oh, Australia, never mind. Thieves and criminals. Mark, however, is, I think, in Illinois. So, or at least in the Midwest somewhere. So you can very definitely get yourself a copy of that sent over. Anyway, Mick Palazzi, speaking of Australia, Mick Palazzi posted some photos from a 40k tournament that he went to over the weekend. It was in Orange, which is in country New South Wales, my home state. And they had 80 people playing. So, pretty amazing turnout. So the first one we've got here is a Chaos Knight army. This one has two War Dogs, two Questoris class knights, and then the huge Porphyron
Yeah.
Porphyrion.
Castus Porphyrion.
Castus Porphyrion, with the massive laser arms that are all about.
I think it's hilarious. They're like, how do we give somebody a Titan without giving them a Titan?
Titan. Yep, exactly. So it's next on my list for my my Knight collection. I don't have one of those yet, but these look great. Absolutely awesome. Thanks for sending that through, Mick. The next one I want to share is from the same event. Just if you thought the Porphyrion and the other Knights were a little bit cheesy, here's an awesome Space Wolf army that has 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts, a Contemptor Dreadnought, 3 Box Dreadnoughts. I think one of them's Murderfang.
He has Murderfang, Bjorn, and a Venerable Dreadnought.
Venerable Dread, right.
And then he's got a Contemptor, and then two Redemptors.
Yep.
A Dreadnought Drop Pod, which I'm assuming Bjorn goes in.
Probably.
And then it looks like he's got Ragnar Blackmane.
Yep.
With a bunch of wolves.
Yep.
And then he's got a squad of assault intercessors.
Like 5 assault intercessors. Tech Marine.
Yeah, a tech priest, and then, or sorry, that's an iron priest if he's a Space Wolf, and then whatever the hell that Forge World tank is.
That's the Asterius. Yeah, which is the Primaris super heavy. So it gives you an idea of what sort of event it was. People were going there just to bring the craziest lists.
And he has 3 eliminators. There are 3 eliminators next to Bjorn.
Oh, okay, hiding back there in the snow camo. But yeah, fun stuff. Fun stuff. Would have been a crazy weekend. Thanks for posting those, Mick. If anybody else is out and about at an event, feel free to post some photos from the event up on the group. If you know who has made the army, just attribute that. But yeah, super cool. Patrick Keith is working on some more Sisters of Battle. So he's got this squad of Seraphim all broken down and ready to prime. So excited to see those on the way. Next up,
he's got some LR bikes in the background there.
Yep. Well, he's still been working on that. Doing the combat patrol using the models from the 80s and 90s.
Oh yeah.
Next up, we've got a piece from Scott Radham. It's one of his new Malifaux characters that he's been working on. Scott, if you're still in here, you'll need to let us know what the name of this guy is. But I think it looks fantastic. I love the variety of textures that you've got on there. Which looks super cool.
It's really cool.
I have a... he posted the close-up as well, so I'll put that in. And... yeah, so you can see the different textures on the skin and the clothing and that.
The green on the hose is one of my favorites.
Right. Yep. Unfortunately, I didn't get a close up of that.
A little bit of lighting effect here and there. It's awesome.
But I love the skin on his face. It kind of feels like sweaty and greasy. Yeah, looks awesome. Great work there, Scott.
Scott's pretty good.
Nice one.
Scott's pretty good.
And then finally, we have Sean Gleason. So Sean has just finished painting up 2 dire wolves for his Adeptus Titanicus force.
Oh yeah, these look great.
Okay, Scott says, oh man, I can't remember. Sebastian, I think. He's part of a weird necromancy Frankenstein kind of crew. He does very much look like that Igor, mad scientist servant
Igor
kind of thing. But yeah, awesome work there, Scott. And these look super cool.
I love the checkerboard. I'm a sucker for checkerboard.
Yep.
And the different lighting effects on the weapons, like the one on the right looks like it's purple, and the one on the left is like blue lighting effect, like plasma.
Yep.
The direwolves to me always look like chickens because like they don't have any arms.
Yeah, they don't look very wolf-like, do they?
Yeah, like
except for maybe the heads. And I think one of my friends, Rich Erickson, sculpted a new head for that. That's actually like an eagle head, which looks a lot better. Makes it look a bit more like a chicken. But
I don't know if that's better or worse, but it's
it leans heavily into the chicken. It doesn't try and do both things. It picks a side and goes with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looks super cool there, Sean. Very nice. Like I said, one of my friends, Mark, has been printing and painting up a whole bunch of Titanicus terrain. Getting some more stuff ready for Adepticon next year. But yeah, looking good. Very cool. One's a volcano cannon and one's a neutron cannon.
Yeah, at some point I need to finish building my Titanicus force. I'm just doing. It's one of the specific maniples. I run 3 warlords. It's 3 warlords and 2 warhounds. It's like hounds to the hunters or something, but like that's basically I have the 2 warlords that are out skirmishing, and then I run the 3 warlords, and then I usually have like a detachment of household knights, and they're just the standard. They're just the standard paladin or whatever. They have like the 1 weapon and the 1 close combat weapon.
Right.
But I was like, once those are done, like that's probably it. I probably won't do anything else, but then I'll probably add something.
Yeah, of course you will. No, awesome stuff. Okay, well, we've run a little bit long tonight, as we usually want to do. We've talked a lot. We talked a lot of miniatures, and we talked a lot of talking miniatures. But yeah, definitely cool to get a chance to have a look through those books and sort of find some more stories that we didn't know. I'm sure there are a bunch more in there. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper. But
pretty cool, though.
Yeah, very nice. But yeah, so if you're interested in stuff from that middle period, the middle hammer kind of days of GW, definitely get in touch with Warlord and say, sell me one of these books. These 2 books become one.
I mean, if it's from Warlord, I can stock them. So
yeah, definitely check it out. And
I will check. If anybody's interested, you can send us ping me on Facebook or whatever, and I'll see if I can get them.
Yep. And when he says ping me on Facebook, he means Alpha Omega Hobbies.
Or me.
Yeah. Or Jake personally. Yeah. Feel free to jump in there. But yeah, definitely super cool. So thank you everybody for joining us for tonight's episode of Talking Miniatures. Build, Paint, Play is what we're called. We talk miniatures. Yep. But
don't forget to do all the stuff.
Yep. So like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. Click the bell to get notifications. In the links below, you'll find our new Build, Paint, Play page, which is the page that we'll be using to post information to about the show. And then we'll share that into the group. So head to the page and like the page so we can start to spread that information. All that sort of fun stuff. We are excited to have the Army Painter as our season sponsor. Thanks very much, guys. So cool to have them on board. We're looking for another sponsor or 2 or 3 so that we can start to expand the things that we can do. I think that's about it.
Thank you guys so much again. Yeah, I think that's it. If you guys get a chance, if you haven't, go on to Army Painter's page.
Yep.
And just give them a like and a review and tell them that you saw it on here. That helps, and that way they know that we're actually like doing something with their sponsorship. So, but thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you next week. Dave and I will send something out at the beginning of the week, letting you guys know, or at the end of the week, letting you know what next week's episode will be.
Yep.
There's a couple options we're kicking around a couple things, but we will let you know as soon as we know. Dave, we ready?
We are. I think we are.
And as always, folks, don't forget to...
Oh, wait. Oh, you mean ready? Oh, no, I was ready. Not ready.
I meant by ready.
I was not ready. I was not ready at all.
We're all set. Everything's good to go.
Okay. Now I'm ready.
Okay, now ready. All right. So, don't forget to...
Build, paint, play.
Shut up and sit down. and sit down.